Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the 5th episode in our Celebrating Success series. This episode is on the topic of dementia care, and latest predictions show that by 2050, there will be an estimated 131.5 million people living with dementia globally. So this is a topic that will only become more and more prevalent. We have two excellent speakers today on this topic with a range of diverse experiences. Our first speaker is Rosie Mead, who is founder and CEO of Musica, Music and Wellbeing CRC. Having worked in arts and health for over 10 years, Rosie has built a career focused on the involvement of music within dementia care settings. Rosie will be providing us with her first-hand experience of using music within these settings and providing some tips and advice on how you could benefit from using music for dementia care in your home. Our second speaker is Tanya Clover, Senior Dementia Consultant at Dementia Support UK. Tanya has worked tirelessly over the last 30 years within the care sector to support older adults, people living with dementia, and their families and carers. Tanya will be talking about her experiences as a dementia consultant and how we can better understand the behaviours of those living with dementia. Today we'll be having a brief Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please do submit your questions as we go along. And with that, I'll now hand over to Rosie. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me as well. I've been really looking forward to this. So I'll just share my screen a moment. There you go. Can you just confirm that you can see the presentation slide?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Rosie.
So as you said, I'm Rosie Mead. So I'm the founder and director of Musica, which is a not-for-profit organisation that supports the well-being of people living with dementia and their caregivers through music. So we've been going for about 11 years. I started the company when I was in the final year of my music degree, and I started volunteering at a local hospital. I was playing the clarinet on the wards, mainly working in elderly care wards. And I just had that kind of first-hand experience of seeing how music could benefit people living with dementia. So although I was working with older patients in general, I soon quickly realised when I was working with patients on the ward that were living with dementia, how beneficial music could be in terms of bringing back memories and then the conversations that would come out of it. The connection that occurred between staff and patients when staff could learn that little bit more about the patients that they were caring for through the music. And I just became really fascinated in this area. So I set up Musica in that final year of my music degree whilst I was working at the hospital. I then continued with my academic journey as well. And really my academic journey and my journey with Musica have just gone hand in hand. And it's kind of my real passion to embed music into care. So I then went on to finish a master's in music psychology. Again, my pilot study for that master's degree was looking at music in dementia care. So mainly in acute care, so working in hospitals, but everything that I've learned, all of my research is transferable to any dementia care setting. I'm now finishing my PhD in music sociology, looking at how music can support the relational aspects of care. So it's going back to that connection that I saw when I first started working in dementia care, and actually looking at how staff can get involved in musical activities, how you can learn about so much more about one another through the musical engagement, through shared experiences in music. And that's really where my PhD looks at, is this kind of relational aspects of care, relation-centered care, how music can then be intertwined in care rather than just being a kind of a nice add-on. So in this presentation, I will try to keep it on the shorter side. There's so much to tell you, but I'm going to be talking a little bit about the science behind why music is beneficial in dementia care, and also looking a bit broader in terms of music is beneficial for all of us. So as caregivers, listening to music, engaging with music is beneficial for all of us. And there are certain benefits for people living with dementia, but actually it's really important that we acknowledge the general health and wellbeing benefits of music to then understand how we can use it in our own lives, as well as connecting with people living with dementia. I'll then talk more about how to embed music into your care. I will finish off by talking about playlists, specifically how to create playlists, how to have meaningful conversations. And then my three key elements really for embedding music into daily dementia care. So a little bit around the science of why music's beneficial. So what actually happens in the brain when we listen to music? I like to think of it like a Christmas tree. So you think of it as kind of the Christmas tree with lots of different lights. When you're listening to music, it's lighting up different areas of the brain at the same time. It's almost like a full brain workout. It's working both sides of the brain at the same time. These are just some of the elements that kind of come into play, are activated when we listen to music. So obviously the most obvious one perhaps is the auditory cortex. So that's kind of actually processing the sounds that we're hearing. The visual cortex, so this is when we have certain images that come back when we listen to a piece of music, which links nicely into the hippocampus, because this is the area of the brain that stores memories, especially kind of emotions, emotional memories, emotions connected with memories. And music, as we all know, plays a massive role in that. We can listen to a piece of music and instantly we're transported back to a period in our life and all of the emotions that come with that too. Prefrontal cortex, the Broca's area, which looks at language. So I often use this example, but when you hear a piece of music where even without thinking, you just sing along with it. So for me, it's the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I mean, there are so many, but that's the one that I always use. So Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, if you asked me to rap it right now, I couldn't. But if I heard that opening bit of the music, I could then, without even thinking, just sing along with it, rap along with it. And I'm sure so many of us have got songs like that. So that's where the Broca's area comes in. And the thing about dementia care is that music can still reach parts of the damaged brain that other forms of communication can't. So if you're thinking of it in terms of that Christmas tree, those areas of the brain still can be lit up when we listen to music. So coming on to the health benefits of music, again, kind of bearing in mind that these are benefits for all of us, but because they're for all of us, it also means that they're beneficial for people living with dementia. And I will come more specific into dementia care in just a moment. But listening to music can help to reduce stress. So it does this by reducing the levels of cortisol in our bodies, so the stress hormone. It can significantly decrease symptoms of depression by improving self-esteem and increasing positive feelings. Listening to music has been shown to help us to sleep better. Research shows that music around 60 to 80 beats per minute, if we listen to it around 45 minutes before we go to sleep, can help to slow down heart rate, lower blood pressure, and aid muscle relaxation, ready for a great night's sleep. Moving to music has been shown to improve the immune system, and it can help with motivation for exercise, which can help us to exercise for longer whilst still feeling great. There's a really interesting one about aiding digestion. So actually listening to soft, maybe piano music has been shown to help us to eat slower and then digest food better. So often in dementia care, having music on in the background, so something that's not too stimulating, can actually help someone to maybe stay at the table for longer, to digest their food better. Maybe if they're at the table for longer, they're more likely to take on more fluid as well. It's all about kind of creating an atmosphere almost. Can help to support better cognitive functioning. Listening to music, so music that we have positive associations with, can actually reduce pain perception. And it does this because the area of the brain that processes music is the same area of the brain that processes pain. So if you're listening to music, it almost becomes a distraction. And research has shown that music can help to reduce the need for analgesics after like post-operative. And your brain can't kind of process the pain and the music at the same time, which is completely fascinating. I've left the most obvious one to last. So listening to positive music can obviously improve mood and can give us that kind of positive feeling as well. Now, I love this slide because there are just so many albums on here. I'm sure that lots of you are sort of looking through this as well and sort of remembering about the albums that you might have in your own collection. But this one is about the power of new and old music. So we have strong emotional connections with music from our teenage years and our early 20s. And this is something that's still evident in people living with dementia too. you yourselves, I'm sure, will find that if you listen to music from your teenage years, from your early 20s, it takes you back to that moment in time. And like I said before about remembering the lyrics, often it's music from this period where we're remembering the lyrics the most. But new music can equally be great for your brain. And again, in dementia care, there's no reason why we shouldn't be exploring new music together. Although familiar music has shown to have the greatest benefit, I think that doesn't mean that we then shouldn't explore new music. The great thing about new music is that your brain, it works hard to process the new music. It's trying to process the sounds that you're hearing and figuring out whether it sounds like something you've heard before, whether it's a particular artist you've heard before or a genre, or the brain is kind of processing these new sounds. It's also creating new memories at the same time, so that then when you listen to that piece of music at another time, it brings back these memories. And obviously, I'm going to be talking a lot in a moment about relationships. In dementia care, it really is going with the individual that you're working with, that you're caring for, and sort of seeing, what music might be good to explore together. And it could be new music that to them. It doesn't have to be new music. I was about to say in the hit parade. That's what my dad would say. It doesn't have to be music from the hit parade. Now, this might seem bizarre, that I have a picture of a triathlete on a presentation about music and wellbeing. The reason that I have this picture is all about transitions. And this is something that I've been really delving into over the last year. Personally, I've realised that we all have a number of transitions in any one day. So thinking about our own life, you might go from waking up to getting breakfast, to getting the kids ready, getting dressed yourself, going to work, the variety of activities in your job, everything else, finishing work, having dinner, going to bed, whatever it is, and everything in between. And people living with dementia, anyone living in a care home, any of us, for all of us, we all have different transitions in our day. Now, music can be a great way to help you feel the way you want to feel in these transitions. And I think in dementia care, this is really important. It's all about the relationships. It's all about knowing the individual that you care for, and then actually thinking about how you can strategically use music throughout the day. So is there a certain way that they like to wake up to get into the day? Whilst having a shower in the morning, would music be particularly beneficial maybe? And then looking at the music that would be meaningful to them throughout the day, like I've said about using music at meal times, just kind of to be considerate. There's never a like one size fits all, and I never like to be prescriptive with this because it really depends about the individual that you're caring for, but just being mindful of the different transitions throughout the day, and then looking at how you can bring music into that. And as we come into the end of the day, if you find that maybe someone becomes particularly agitated at sunset, so we know this is sundowning, using music maybe sort of 30 minutes before that trigger, music that's meaningful to them, has been shown. And again, it's so subjective. So the research can show one thing, but actually really take the individuals that you're caring for and look at this individual level. But there is research to suggest that music can help to reduce feelings of agitation, can help with this kind of feeling of like positive emotions, feeling grounded, and then can help with agitation and particularly with sundowning. Sorry if you can hear my dog sniffing. So moving on, so this is kind of the specific benefits in dementia care. Obviously, all of the benefits that I've talked about that are beneficial for all of us are applicable to people living with dementia. It's for all of us. The specific benefits in dementia care are that music can help to promote reminiscence and memory recall. And the great thing about this is that I think as caregivers, we can learn so much more about one another, actually, by you sharing your own musical memories and learning about the musical memories of those that you care for as well. We can learn much more about each other as individuals, which can then help with care too. Like I said, it can strengthen connections. It can support a reduction in instances of agitation, as I've spoken about. And that's a big part of my PhD, is looking at how music can help with the relational aspects of care by creating connections with the individual and their environment, others around them, but also with themselves, that sense of self and self-identity, which then as a result can help to reduce agitation. Listening to music can support well-being and kind of feelings of positivity. improve feelings of self-identity and empowerment. And I think empowerment is so key for us to focus on, and really working together by using music in care, letting the individual choose what they want to listen to and feeling empowered to kind of take control of this musical engagement and facilitating it. But the key to doing this is by using meaningful music. So again, I always like to say it's not prescriptive at all. It is all around knowing the individuals that you care for, building these relationships, using music that's meaningful, and finding out, there's a real joy in finding out what music is meaningful to the individuals, by delving into their life history, particular memories that come back, involving relatives in this as well. And that's where you'll see all of the benefits I've mentioned. They will only come from this meaningful music. It has to be meaningful to the individual. So not kind of a blanket, we're going to play wartime songs. And for some individuals, that will be meaningful, but not for everybody. So coming on to playlists. So this is a great way to use music at an individual level by creating playlists. You can create multiple playlists for multiple moods or different times of day. Again, using music that's meaningful. And it might take time to discover this, but really kind of trust in the process, enjoy the journey, and don't focus so much on going straight to that outcome. So when I train staff, often people want to jump to our last bit of our training, which is all around making the playlist. But actually you say, take your time, focus on the relationship side first, build relationships, build connections. The music will organically come out of it. You'll create playlists. Don't forget to share playlists with the individual's loved ones. So do bring in family members, encourage them to suggest songs that could be part of the playlists, suggest particular memories, and make it this kind of collaborative thing. Sorry, my timer's just gone. I've probably got 2 more minutes. It doesn't have to be Spotify. Don't let technology become a barrier. I'd say focus mainly on having those conversations, on the meaningful connections, creating playlists, even if at first your playlist is just written down, and then look at the ways that you can play the music depending on the resources you have, whether you have Spotify or YouTube, or you just want to use vinyls. And actually, as a record collector myself, if anyone you're caring for do have vinyls, make the most of them. Even just sitting down, looking through an album, looking at the sleeve, looking at the lyrics, there'll be so many memories from just this kind of this tactile stimulus. And review it regularly. Our musical tastes change, and new memories might suddenly come back, as in old memories might suddenly be sparked from something else. So do review it. If there's a way to pop these into your care plan, it's great. So I know a lot of the care homes I work with write down the playlist and then they put it on the back of the resident's wardrobe so that any member of staff can come in and they know that that's where they can look for the resident's playlist. Use whatever works in your setting, but do review it regularly. So the final slide, I'm going to leave you with the 3 C's. So these are the key ingredients in my mind to integrating music into dementia care. Now, funnily enough, these are our Musica values. And it just suddenly dawned on me, probably about this time last year, that our Musica values are exactly the ingredients for embedding music into care. So the first is creativity. So music is a creative activity, and creativity lies at its core. Really think of it as a creative tool rather than an activity in itself, if that makes sense. So music is a tool for so many other things, like strengthening connections, improving self-esteem, self-identity, all of the things that I've said. But music in its own right isn't the thing. It's how music is used. And that's why, as caregivers, I always say you do not need to be musical to use music in a meaningful way. What you do need to do is to focus on relationships. And then by having the right tools, by having the toolkit, you can then bring music into that space. The next one is connection. So remembering about meaningful music, it's all about supporting connections between the individual, their environment, those around them, and a sense of reconnection with themselves. The final one is collaboration. So embedding music into care isn't just down to one person. So for instance, the activities coordinator. actually it needs to be a whole home approach. I think to truly embed music into care, it needs to be used in this collaborative way by bringing in other members of staff, by bringing in family members and that kind of wider community. As I said, you don't need to be musical to embed music into dementia care. So I hope you found that interesting. So we're going to have questions in a bit, and always feel free to get in touch with me as well if you have any extra questions around embedding music into your care.
Thank you very much for that, Rosie. Very interesting presentation, and incredible that you can get so much out of music, actually. And I think one of the things that I do love about the whole music conversation is that it's very practical, isn't it? Everyone's got access to music. And I think you had some tips in there which are very applicable, if you like, that people can put into practice straight away, which is always very useful, and interesting to see the science behind it as well. Always interesting to see that side of it. So thank you very much for that. We do have a couple of questions, but as you said, we'll come back to that at the end. And for now, I'll hand over to Tanya to fill us in on her experiences within dementia care. Thanks, Tanya.
Hi, thanks very much. That was really interesting, Rosie. Thank you very much for that that lead in. That's really interesting presentation. I think my slides are going to be shared. My name's Tanya. I'm the Senior Dementia Consultant for Dementia Support UK. My background is in the NHS and social services. I've been around for a while, so trained as a registered nurse, having worked already in a care service, and have worked in dementia care settings. I've done every job, I think, in a care home, from weekend cleaner to area support manager. And my speciality is I've always worked to enable people to give them voice in the space where they are. So what I want to do today is say I'm the Senior Dementia Consultant for Dementia Support UK, which sits within HammondCare. And I'll tell you a little bit about HammondCare. So I'm going to introduce who HammondCare are for those of you that don't know who we are. We're going to talk very quickly about what we know about dementia care and what we know works, some of what we know doesn't work. I'm going to look particularly at a case study today. The case study that I'm going to explore was a case where we had a lady referred to us because staff were initially concerned that she couldn't communicate, or that they felt was refusing to communicate with them. But as we will show you through the work, there was an awful lot more going on, and we helped them to understand what was happening. Obviously, Q&As at the end, and my last slide will show you how to keep in touch with us. So HammondCare, those of you that don't know us, I sit within Dementia Support UK, which is the international arm of HammondCare. And I'm part of the Dementia Centre, which is actually grounded in Sydney. HammondCare is an international company. We are primarily based in Australia. And our focus is relationships, as Rosie says, relational care, relationships and stories. We're storytellers. So we have a series of arms of expertise, and dementia is one of those. One of our other arms of expertise is palliative care, and I'll tell you a little bit about that, and also rehabilitative care for people living with dementia as well. So I sit within Dementia Support UK. I was also consultant, team leader and service manager of Dementia Support Australia. Dementia Support Australia sits within the Dementia Centre in Australia, and we are a government funded service over there to provide support directly into any space that a person living with dementia is. So that might be community, it might be care homes, nursing homes, and we are planes, trains and automobiles. So as a dementia support consultant and as a service manager there, our role was to get consultants to people as quickly as possible, depending on the need. And I can share the studies that we've done. So over the last year, we had 25,000 contacts. So 25,000 different people connect with us either through DS UK or DSA, Dementia Support Australia. And our role is to act as that go-between between the person and the service there. We're never there, whilst we have experts on our badge, we're never there to criticise or critique the care and delivery of the staff around. We really are there as an extra pair of eyes and somebody to say, that's a brilliant piece of work. Have you thought about this? Because care and support staff are doing their absolute best. Sometimes they just need somebody else to turn up and go, brilliant, but have you thought about this? And that's what we can do. We also, so HammondCare is not just the research centre, though that's really funky and it's brilliant where we work. We also, in HammondCare, we actually deliver the service. So we provide hospital care, specialist palliative care. We provide specialist dementia care services. on a village model. So we provide small village setups across Australia and Tasmania. We also provide domiciliary services, again, across Australia and Tasmania. That includes specialist dementia care services and specialist palliative care services. So we also walk the walk. We can talk the talk and we walk the walk as well. And all of our consultants do a period of time in those services as well. We're involved in research and evaluation over here. Some of you may have seen the work on the Dementia Dog Programme. We evaluated that. We're just finishing off some work evaluating dementia-friendly communities up in Scotland with the Life Changes Trust, which has been amazing work. And we do a large amount of work on design as well. So looking at how you design space from and with the person living with dementia as well. So we have a broad range of skill. And one of the bonuses of Dementia Support UK, I'm a practitioner at heart. So my work's always been with the person, but we have all of our research team and all of our specialist consultants, psychiatrists, psychologists that we can draw on when we need to. Just as a disclosure as well, so I work part-time for HammondCare. I've recently just completed part-time work for a period of time. I was the head of dementia services for a small care home group. So whilst Dementia Support UK is virtual service, I deliver support over the phone, over video. I also have recently been involved throughout pandemic as the head of dementia services for a group, which has involved me being in practice as well, which is where you need to be. You need to have your boots on the ground. Just wanted to share one other little piece of HammondCare work that I'm especially proud of. Darlinghurst, our service in Darlinghurst opened about 18 months ago in inner Sydney. And it's a service dedicated to support people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness with high care needs. So HammondCare, we're all about providing support to people regardless of their need. And we're incredibly proud to be able to reach out to people who are homeless, who are also living with dementia on the streets of Sydney, to provide the support to them. So we work with experts, and many of the experts that we work with are people who are also living with dementia. Two of these services, these particular resources are free on my website. We'll share some information later on. So Sean lives with frontotemporal dementia. He's a gentleman in his 50s and very active on social media. You may talk to him, but he's written a really useful guide along with a colleague of mine, Deborah, and that's around how to support somebody with frontotemporal dementia. Talking Sense is a superb free resource co-written by Agnes Houston and by my service manager, Dr. Julie Christie. And that's around the sensory changes that can happen for somebody living with dementia that aren't always picked up on. We're going to talk about that in our case study. And our design school as well. So we do a lot of work, as I say, designing with and for the person living with dementia. So what works and what doesn't work. So we are practitioners on the ground as well as researchers. So I don't need to tell practitioners here around behaviour distress and stress symptoms. So we do see behaviours and psychological symptoms are very common in dementia. There is a great deal of talk on social media around how you describe those, what you call those. I talk about them as distress indicators. In our pilot study last year, and certainly supported by the much larger studies in Australia as well, but agitation and aggression tend to be the behaviours that staff are most concerned about. They're the things that people have the most difficulty in supporting, challenges, and the most common situations as well. And certainly to the services referred to us, agitation was the commonest behaviour. Also, what we called here abnormal motor behaviours. That might be somebody who in terms would call walking with purpose, somebody who might have a tremor or who is moving, repetitive movements, repetitive actions. We see a huge amount of anxiety, delusions, hallucinations, and disinhibition as well. And as well as being the commonest things, quite often the people that are referred to us, we see more than one behaviour. So the staff member may come to me to talk about the fact that they're really disturbed about the aggression, the verbal aggression that somebody might be showing, or the physical aggression. But as you start to dig through that, you start to find all sorts of other things that are going on as well. Unfortunately, historically, and certainly through lockdown, we've seen an increase in this, where behaviours and psychological symptoms are treated with antipsychotics. They're treated with medication. Whilst there is a small percentage of people who may benefit from that, we know the research, the practice, the backup tells us that overuse, misuse of antipsychotic medication is harmful to people living with dementia and can actually be fatal in some circumstances, quite a few circumstances. So it's quite strange. The study we're going to talk about, and it's really interesting listening to Rosie talking about the mitigation of pain using musical stimuli, which we have seen. But we find that sometimes people are over-medicated using antipsychotics, and yet medical practitioners seem to be nervous about prescribing something that we all know is really, really effective for agitation, and that's low-grade paracetamol. From research done by Ballard years and years ago, and from our own practice, we know, treat the pain, just treat the pain. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through our case study as well. So the DS UK, we are a non-pharmacological service. We don't have in the UK, we don't have psychiatrists sitting with us. We do have in Australia, but in the UK, what we do is a tailored approach to provide ideas and suggestions on a non-pharmacological basis. But if I do feel that some pharma needs to be advised, then we will refer to that as well. So, you know, Rosie's already stolen my thunder and all of this. The way that that we provide dementia care today, it's about relationship-based care. So when Kitwood, I used to work for Bradford Dementia Group. So Kitwood came out when Kitwood was talking, when Tom was talking, Tom talked about person-centered care. We have done a great deal of work since Tom was around, and we recognize the value of person-centered care, which should be the bedrock of what we stand on. We are now delivering relationship-based care, which is about an equality and a reciprocity with the person and for the person as well. Our relationship-based model looks at a number of elements that have an impact on the person and how the person impacts those as well. So we talk about enabling environments and how the person is affected by the environment, quite often overlooked. And as I go through my case study, I'll give you a really quick example of how you can help in your environment. Physical health and well-being. So often I hear, well, it's the dementia. Well, actually, you know what? It's not. I can remember being in a nursing home relatively recently, and this gentleman had a hacking cough. It wasn't COVID, but he did have a nasty cough, and he was expectorating green phlegm. And a very, very experienced nurse said to me, they do that with dementia, don't they? So that, you know, they tend to do that with a pneumonia or something like that, or a really nasty chest infection. Give him the antibiotic, let's see how he goes. So physical health and well-being, food. Rosie's already talked about the importance of dining, the importance of food as well. We need people to be in relative health, which means they've got to be as healthy and as well as we can get them. Psychological well-being is a really important element to how somebody survives through their dementia. They've got to feel positive, and that's about resilience, about drawing out the resilience, and it's about enabling the person to feel confident in themselves wherever they're at. And the social environment. Kitwood talked about malignant social psychology and positive person work. So social environment is what happens around the person, the words, the language, the attitudes of the people around that person, how that supports that person to do well or not do well, really. So, excuse me, take some water. Dementia Support UK. We launched with a pilot last year. Our pilot was free to air. It was supported by Innovate UK. We currently have two-layered system. So we have quite a lot of our services are available on open access. Our app is free to download. Please, that's what it will look like. DS UK app on Android and on iOS. And through the app, you can have access to our free-to-air e-learning services, as well as our guide and support, our support guides and our guidance services as well. So we start off with the app, which is free. There's an open access area on the website as well. But then there is a subscription service, which is incredibly good value, which adds on to that. What you can see, the very small area, but the infographic on the right-hand side, I'll share this after with the PowerPoint slides. And this is just a summary of the effectiveness of our Innovate funded service last year. And it proved to be incredibly effective with people. So what to expect if you use Dementia Support UK, you get somebody like me. So the layers of work, you might have the staff member might have the app, they might question through the app, or anybody might have the app. You might want to go to the e-learning services or to the further support guides and the free to download ebooks and e-resources on our website. Then what you might do with a subscription service, you might want to talk a little bit more about this person. And we have live chat, so which is basically tech service through the website, which is available to subscribers from 10 till 8, Monday to Friday. Or what you might want to do is actually refer a person. We'll talk about that case study in a minute, where you've got a little bit more concern about this person, and what you want to do is have a full dementia consultation, which would involve somebody like me doing a phone call, doing a triage, then coming back and doing a consultation with that person as well. So we provide a timely response. We will turn around our responses within 24 to 48 hours, quicker if we feel there is a need. I have got back to a referrer within 15 minutes because they were coming off night shift and they were worried. So we were there. We have a relationship-based approach. We can provide support from the everyday to the complex. And sometimes the complex is everyday and the everyday is really, really complex. So sometimes the simple things that people think are going on aren't. There's an awful lot more going on. We provide tailored support and guidance. We value care and support staff. I'm never going to turn up and say I know more than you, because I don't. I just have a posh badge and a posh title. But the people who have the person at the end of their hands is the expert in that care, as well as the person themselves and their families. And a great deal of time. I've worked in adult services all of my life. So often we have allied services might turn up and give this care team some advice about what to do. And the care team's been doing that for the last 3 months to 6 months. They know what they're doing. They just want some support and some guidance in doing that, a little bit extra on top. We don't know it all, but I do know a man that might. So we do have access to international expertise, and I can call on other consultants. And as I said, live chat and one-to-one consultation as well. So a lot of what we do is around unpicking what's going on for the person and the care team as well, to understand those behaviours, however you want to describe them. So I do want to go through a case study. I've made some notes on a case study so that I don't waffle on too long, because getting me to stop is usually the issue. So I want to introduce you to Ruth. Ruth was referred to Dementia Support UK after concerns by the care team that she was struggling. There was struggling to communicate with staff. They thought she was ignoring them. And quite often this struggle was around personal care. The referral was made by the deputy home manager. Her name was Wendy. She made the referral to us through our online portal on a Saturday night, and we got back to her on the Tuesday morning. Always important to know the person. Ruth moved to the care setting in 2018, and that was shortly after her diagnosis. She'd previously lived alone, very proud woman, lived alone and some distance from this particular setting. And this is a setting that I physically have been in as well. The move was prompted by her son and her daughters because they wanted her to live closer to them. She had suspected vascular dementia, and we also know that she lived with some visual disturbance. She'd grown up in London, but she'd moved to Wales with her husband after his retirement. She was now widowed. Her husband, Martin, and her had 4 children, but she was only really in contact with 1 son and 1 daughter. When she was younger, Ruth had such a funky job. She worked as the private secretary to, I can't name him, but a managing director of a significant UK film company. She used to, everything films. She was such a glamorous lady. She used to love being outdoors and gardening, but her biggest passion in life was cricket. She'd get up in the morning, she'd turn the radio on just to listen to the cricket commentary, and she'd have that on in the background no matter what she was doing. Ruth currently has no support from allied care services. The mental health team had previously been involved when the care team were worried about her communication, but they had told the care team that it was due to her dementia. It's what you expect, nothing to do, move on. So the way that we work in DS UK, we do a phone call, initial triage. So working with the care team first off to find out what was going on. And although the referral was made around communication, during the triage and the consultation, the conversations we had, we understood there was an awful lot more going on. They talked about the fact that her mobility had changed recently. She seems unsteady at times, reluctant to move at others. She'd fallen twice in the last few months. She had difficulty coordinating sometimes a knife and a fork at the same time. So staff had started to cut her food up for her. She was becoming increasingly unwilling to accept personal care. And she'd become quite hostile towards staff if they offered. The staff had also noticed that she stopped being interested in the things around her. She didn't want to listen to the cricket. She didn't want to be with her friends. So we had a good conversation. I had a good conversation with the care team at triage. We wanted to gather as much information as possible, and we do a basic delirium screening. Staff were able to confirm that there'd been no change or concern about her bowel habits. Her recent urinalysis was clear. There'd been no change to her medication over the year, because I'm looking to see what has caused this change. But Ruth had fallen twice in the last few months. Now, although staff had reported no significant injuries at the time, she's a 91-year-old frail woman. There was a really strong likelihood. I'm 53 and my bones hurt when I go out of bed in the morning. Right? So at 91, there's a really strong chance that she has got some pain from her falls, but also simply from her frailty and her age. So she may be experiencing pain or be fearful of pain, which may be restricting her movement and may be increasing her verbal agitation. But there was not enough information at triage to understand what was going on about pain. So I asked them to start completing some Abbey pain scales to bring back to me later on. Now, sensory changes we've already talked about are very common for people living with dementia, especially those with vascular dementia, but they're often overlooked. So Ruth lives with dementia. She has sensory changes. There may be things going on that are happening that change her perception of the world, but because she doesn't always use words and she lives with dementia, she may not have the insight or the ability to tell us what's actually happening. Her mobility was changing. Could have been in the pain or stiffness following the falls. She also had a deterioration in coordination. Now, that might be because of progressive change in her brain or because of a delirium forced by pain, changes to her vision, or a combination. We just didn't know. We did talk about how the environment may impact her. And the environment isn't just the layout. We all know it's the temperature, it's the lighting, it's the sound, it's how the environment affects the person's mood, how the person is able to see and move through the environment as well. I have very simple apps on my phone, not high tech. I have the high tech stuff, but to say to staff is I use a sound meter and I use a light meter just to see, how somebody can move through the space. Now, we talked about the changes to her coordination. The staff said that she can only do a knife or a fork, which was great that you've observed that. But then I asked them to think about if she can only use one implement in her ordinary, if she's eating, maybe she can only do one implement in the rest of her life, like her activities. So rather than asking her to knit, maybe she can stir. Rather than asking her to weigh out ingredients when she's cooking, maybe she can just hand things in. So think about she can only use one thing at a time. Think about that in the rest of her life. And we talked about her changes to communication and her loss of love of life, really. And we said that these may be contributed by any of the above, the pain, possibly a delirium, the changes to her communication abilities, the loss of coordination. It could be any of the above. But we also wondered whether, and this is so often overlooked, maybe she was experiencing a depression or an apathy. Again, very common for somebody with dementia, especially those with vascular dementia as well, and so often overlooked. And the other thing I have to talk about, in the conversation with Wendy was acting up to home manager. There'd been a series of managers in this home. And she was now acting up as home manager with the support of her regional support. So there'd been a change of leadership and a significant change of staff team. And we all know the impact on relationships that can have. So what we recommended, delirium screen, focus on the pain. We identified through that she was living in pain. So I asked them to do pain assessments on movement and directly after movement. She was living with pain. Ballard's work, low grade paracetamol regularly throughout the day. Please just give it. And also give it for 2 weeks, have a look. And we suggested as well they give the pain relief 30 minutes before personal care. And be mindful of her pain when you're moving. Even though she's having paracetamol, you're being kind. She's still a 91-year-old frail woman who may be experiencing some pain. We also asked the care team to subtly suggest to the GP that possibly could we look at whether or not this individual is depressed or is experiencing apathy, because we think as a care team she might be. And then we talked about all the basic stuff with communication. We're all wearing masks. How difficult is it to understand the person the other end with a mask on? So we said, slow everything down. We don't know what damage is going on in her brain. Let's make a really good guess. So let's think that possibly she's struggling with communication. So slow every conversation down. Add in movements, but slow movements. She's got visual loss. Don't make big movements in front of her, okay? If you need to, step back, lower your mask so that she can see you. Think about giving her the information now before you step on to the next task. And give those instructions really clearly. Think about how much information she can hold on to, how much memory she's got before you give the next information. Be really clear about your information. Don't give unambiguous statements. Staff, use her name. Use her name every single time you go to her. Use your name every single time you go to her. Don't assume that she's remembered who you are. She lives with dementia. She's living in your care home because she's got dementia. Don't assume she can remember who you are. And give visual prompts. We looked, because she was having difficulty with food, I asked the staff to sit to watch her eating, and they said she's right hand. She uses her right hand. Brilliant. Okay, so look at how she's doing things. Look at the table. Look at where she's reaching to on the table and put the food she needs on that space, in that space she's reaching to. If she's using her right hand, put her fork on the right hand side, because a knife, if we lay a table, fork left, knife right, you see people eating with a knife. Put the fork on the right where she's using. And we also said about finding out about the film studio, those sorts of things. So staff were brilliant, went away, did all of that. And what we found was the GP was also, oh, that's a good idea. So the GP was brilliant as well. We changed her pain relief. She was considered for antidepressants, which they were in place for a short, brief 6-week period. That was really good as well. We talked about her visual changes, really simple app. So I asked the staff to look at the grayscale through their camera on their phone. Look at the grayscale, look through the environment. If you can see the difference, there's a really quick way to, you can see the difference between two objects, then the person has a chance of seeing that difference. If using your grayscale they can't, maybe they can't either. So really simple thing, got staff going around with their phones trying to see if she can see. And we talked to her family, we brought all of those ideas into her plan of care. And for me, the most important thing of that case study as well was, yes, we made a difference to Ruth. She got pain relief. We looked at how we could engage her. We changed the way we communicate. But the care team said to me afterwards, that was great, Tan, because what I could then do is think, oh, we've sorted this out for Ruth, but there's another lady that sits at the same table as Ruth. I think she's also got pain, apathy, whatever. I think what we're going to do is try this for her. And for me, that's an absolute winner. That's the thing. It's about empowering staff to be confident with their knowledge and move on. Move that in a minute. And that's how you can get hold of me. I work part-time. I'm currently in a field because I have the most wonderful boss. So I do work part-time, but my team are always around. And we are available 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. But if you are a subscriber to our service, we're available outside of that time as well. And that's me. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Tanya. A lot of information. I think it's very good to have that from someone that's had so much experience, both from the, I guess you could say, the high level research point of view, but also from the perspective of having feet on the ground in care homes as well, which, like you said right at the start, is absolutely critical in this kind of thing. And I think something that's clearly come through very strongly on both presentations is the importance of relationship-based care as well. So good to have that highlighted. And also really fascinating case study, and I think the amount of lessons that can be taken out of that is again very powerful. So appreciate you sharing all of that. So yes, we will now have a short Q&A session. If there is any in particular that anyone would like to ask, please do submit them. Firstly, for yourself, Rosie, just a specific point on your presentation. You emphasised that kind of the whole thing really hinges around the music being meaningful music and not just any kind of music, if you like. Can you give any specific tips on how to actually uncover what is meaningful music for a specific resident? Is there anything you can expand on that?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously it depends on how people are able to communicate. So some of it might have to be trial and error if you really kind of can't discover. But I'd say generally start off by having a conversation. It's just really simple. It is all this relationship side. It's having a conversation with the individual. You know, if you already know a little bit about their life history, then kind of bringing in that element into it, and try and steer away from kind of, do you remember, or, you know, just that blunt, what's your favorite piece of music? Because I think for all of us, if someone asked me that, I couldn't tell you, because there's just so much. But it's to kind of ease it in, have that conversation, become a detective, bit of trial and error, maybe start playing some piece of music or a genre and seeing what the response is, going with it or changing it if you need to. Again, bringing in family members as well, but not to the point where the family take over. There needs to be that kind of balance. It's still working with the individual. It's their music, but yeah, bringing in families and having those conversations. Becoming a detective. Brilliant.
No, that's very interesting. And just out of interest, are there any particular genres you do find that are normally particularly popular, or does it completely vary?
It completely varies. Doris Day is often very popular, but she's not going to be popular with everyone. I have a lot of people that one lady, she's in her 90s, and she'd recently bought the latest like Clean Bandit album. And that's the thing, is we shouldn't stereotype. I think that's what I really want to move away from, is no stereotypes, focus on the individual and what's meaningful to them. But yeah, there are obviously ones. like can be like crowd pleasers, but my thing is about working at an individual level.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And again, coming back to that relationships-based care, isn't it? So that's really interesting. To Tanya, a more general point, we were actually briefly talking about just before we went live today, but are there any particularly common challenges right across the board with dementia care that you've come across when visiting care homes? Is there any particular things that seem to keep repeating themselves?
Yeah, missing pain. So I go on about it. I'm boring. I'm so boring about identifying pain. But when you see a change in the person, please, the first thing is don't assume it's the dementia. Yes, the person is living with dementia, but there could be all sorts of other things going on. So when you see a change, consider the things for me, consider the physical health and well-being. Are they sleeping well at night? Are they eating okay? Are their bowels working? Have they had urinalysis? Has their medication been flipped around too many times? Always, always, always consider pain. Say, I'm a 53-year-old, very fit person. I got off my horse this morning. Not everything works. People experience pain. Always consider pain. Always start with low-grade paracetamol before you'll go to an antipsychotic or even an antidepressant. Think about managing pain. And also, I think we've seen the studies over pandemic, talked about over pandemic, where unfortunately, because of the restrictions to access to mental health services, sometimes staff had to do what they think is the right thing, and that is to use antipsychotic medication to control somebody's behavior, or people in community have had to do that as well. So just to take a step back and think, okay, what's right for this person in space? And other challenges as well are around the movement of people for me. So when somebody arrives in a dementia care home, they come with a care plan. Now, I used to work in social services, and I know that I wrote that plan of care in social services, so I would get the money out of my boss, like ring him out, get that money out of that man. But then unfortunately, that assessment would then go to the care home. I wrote the worst day possible for this person because my boss was mean-minded. I had to get the money out of him. So if that assessment then goes to the care home just see this whole list of terrible things about this person. Whereas actually, I wrote that for funding. I wrote that because I needed the money. That's not who the human being is. So don't just assume the paperwork. Go look at the person. For me, I think definitely.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And looking ahead, there's been a lot of reflection on the past 12 to 18 months for obvious reasons. And again, we were saying earlier about how it has so heavily impacted those living with dementia. But looking ahead to the next few years, do you have any particular predictions on how dementia care will change in the future? Particularly when it's estimated that there's going to be so many more people across the globe living with it. Have you got any predictions on the future?
Yeah, we're all going to age. That's the one thing. Now, we need to see more of housing with care, housing support. We need to think more community, and there's a huge amount of work going on in community to develop. So dementia-friendly community, a good community is supportive of everybody. People want to age in space. So it's about making sure that we have got provision in place to enable people to age where they want to. I think with the growing numbers and our better diagnostic process, I work with a very close friend who is head of planning in the fire brigade, and we need to think about employers. So whilst the fire service are a brilliant service supporting people with dementia in community, we're also talking about writing policies so that they can support firemen living with dementia. We're going to increase the numbers of people under age and under 65 years of age, working age, people with families. We need to think about how we support people to continue to be who they are in community. I think we need to increase our housing with care. I think we also need to increase, as we go forward, we need to think about how people can, as I say, age in space. So rather than that's the dementia care home, that's the nursing home, we need to think about how we incorporate people into community. We keep to hold. And so those barriers, those brick walls around a nursing home and a dementia care home, they can still be there, but we have to mentally think past them. Let's connect people as much as possible. And let's think about supporting people to age well, which means keeping them active, keeping them well, and reducing the medication where it's appropriate.
Brilliant. Yeah, a very, very insightful answer. And Rosie, did you have any particular comments on either the point on common challenges you come across or predictions looking at the future? Do you have any comments?
Yeah, so I think predictions, and I do tend to have rose-tinted glasses, so this might not be, but what I'd really like to see, maybe that's the better thing, with me, if I go back to the music side, I'd like to see music seen as not just a nice to have, but actually something that is important, as well as other activities. You know, if we look at meaningful, music won't work for everyone, but to start seeing this kind of an integrated approach with using music, embedding music, rather than just having like entertainers coming in once a month for 1 hour for all residents, we're going to start seeing a bit of a shift. I also wonder whether we'll start seeing shifts in terms of the preventative side. So, you know, most of us, or so many of us over the last 18 months have been working from home. Employers are kind of maybe focusing more on well-being than they have been. So you wonder whether we're going to start looking at like workplace stress, where we can reduce things that actually at an earlier age might be indicators of an increase of dementia. We might start seeing sort of more preventative elements becoming to the forefront.
Brilliant. Excellent. Yeah, that's very good. And I think we say this at the end of most webinars, but we could carry on talking about it for a long time. I think particularly with something like dementia, it is such a huge topic, which it does impact so many different areas. It's something that we consider very carefully at HammondCare as a company that manufactures furniture and furnishings for care homes. And on the interior design side of things, it is a critical thing to be factored into a lot of those sort of decisions. But I think for now, we'll say thank you to everyone for joining us today. It's only been very interesting to hear the experiences of both Tanya and Rosie in the field of dementia care. And I hope that everyone found their tips and insights helpful. We'll be circulating a recording of this webinar along with the slides and contact details for the speakers shortly. Thank you again to Rosie and Tanya for your time, and we look forward to seeing you all at our final webinar of this series next month. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you.